Got to say a few things about some real problems in society, particularly thinking of the United States, but I think on some level this can also apply on this side of the pond, because I think we've definitely seen spillover to an extent, and we can't rule out some similar problems happening in the future. Um, Recently, I've been seeing a lot of memes online from left-wing sources that are sort of taking this comparison between murders, controversial killings, whether they be by police officers or far right activists or otherwise. And they're saying that that's worse than rioting and looting. Well, firstly, it's obvious that the premise of this is, whether they admit it or not, it's downplaying the latter. Um, Kind of makes me angry, to be honest, and this is why. I don't think anyone will say that murder isn't a serious matter. There have been cases of murder where self-defense has been cited. I'm not saying that's justified or not, but I know that's been cited. But you may ask why I haven't commented on the Kenosha violence. Um, Quite honestly, it's hard to keep up with the United States these days. I honestly think there are extremes on both sides. I mean, at the start of the pandemic, just for those who think I'm biased against the left, at the start of the pandemic, there were right wing gun militias who stormed state capitol buildings and they didn't kill anyone, but it was very thuggish behavior. Um, Apparently, a Trump supporter was shot dead in Kenosha after taunting Black Lives Matter activists. And obviously, a few days before that, that 17-year-old shot two people supposedly in self-defense. But there's a lot of back and forth with this. What is irrefutable is that this year has just been absolutely a roller coaster for race relations in the United States and for social unrest. I think you'd have to go back to at least 1992. And in that situation, it was localized to Los Angeles. The last time the United States had nationwide riots, you have to go back, I think, unless I'm mistaken, to 1968, when the riots were nationwide. There have been bloodier riots before this year, but it's a very bad situation. I mean, the culture wars are just it's becoming. I was watching a film about the Northern Ireland Troubles this week, and it's almost like a sort of sectarianism, but on a much, much bigger scale, i.e., covering the United States of America. And it's a desperate situation. So if Biden becomes president, the first thing he'll really need to prioritize is uniting. To those who say that he's a left wing puppet, Biden's obviously a left wing figure. There's no question about that. But for Republicans who fear a Biden presidency, their fear may be misplaced. Because Joe Biden has a record of working across the aisle. In fact, after Trump was elected, there's videos shows Biden as president of I believe, the vice president, as he then was, holds the position of president pro tempore. I'm not quite sure, but anyway, he had the authority uh, to close the motion denouncing Trump's win. He said, "Look, Trump's won, and that's we have to move on with that. There's no more discussion to be had." So, for those on the right fearing a Biden presidency, I think it's a mistake to see this man as some sort of far left figure. I do think that it's important that Joe Biden has a Sista Souljah moment. This is referring to, and I only discovered this week actually, in 1992, Bill Clinton denounced the rapper Sista Souljah when she made a pretty racist statement about white people. Now, Clinton denounced that and he said, if you replace white with black, that could have come from David Duke. Clinton was denounced for that by the likes of Jesse Jackson and others for not understanding the mood of the people. But what Sister Souljah said, and I know nothing about her, but it was pure racial hatred, no question about it, against white people. Um, I hope that Biden has a Sister Souljah moment. That is to say, I hope Biden calls out the extremes that are deemed to be connected to the Democratic Party. There are racist factions within Black Lives Matter. There are extreme factions within Black Lives Matter. And that needs to be recognized. Now, Trump is never going to call out the extremes on his side because he is not a leader, in my opinion. But Biden needs to show leadership, and that would be actually a move to reassuring Republicans and right wingers. Of course, there'll be controversy around it. There'll be some on the far left that say he shouldn't do it, but I think he should. It would be a diplomatic and important move, whilst also condemning the far right. Um, but back to the main point I was making. Like I said, angers me because the implication is that because murder is a terrible thing, then somehow vandalism and looting is trivial. So they're saying things like, I saw one ridiculous meme earlier, which was like, um, oh, murder is justified, but violence and looting should be condemned. My response was, well, both should be condemned. Murder is ultimately worse, but it really angers me that some on the left, well, I'm going to call them far left, have actually thought that the violence that we've seen this year is somehow justified. And when you push them on this, they'll deny it. But they usually commence their argument by saying, oh, well, people are angry. Well, look at what's happening in Belarus, right? I have a friend in Minsk. The people of Belarus have every reason to be angry and fed up. They've been brutalized by the police. Some people have died. And this has been happening for 26 years. But the people of Belarus have been overwhelmingly peaceful, in part because they know of the brute force that Lukashenko will unleash. There's a picture of him earlier. It was his birthday yesterday, and it was almost cartoonish. He was dressed up like a riot officer. He's a classic cartoonish dictator, really. But my point with that is, if the people of Belarus, with everything they've been through, can protest peacefully, then there really is no excuse for American citizens, no matter how angry and disillusioned they feel, to not protest peacefully. Now, people might say that doesn't work. I'm not foolish, I'm not a pacifist, but if you are looting businesses, if you are vandalizing properties, you're not you're not hitting out at the police, right? If that's your supposed target, um, you're just hurting ordinary people. That's what makes me so angry when people try to defend it or downplay it. And they downplay it like it's a small thing. Like making people homeless is a small thing. Like endangering people's lives. This is the thing. They compare it to murder, but arson can lead to murder. If you throw a Molotov cocktail at a business, and let's say, as is often the case, someone lives above their business, that's endangering their life. Back in 2011, when England had the riots, I remember a young woman, I believe she was Polish or Lithuanian, and it was quite a famous photograph. She had to jump from her apartment window during the riots. Now, those riots left, or I should say, someone on the left, tried to almost quasi justify them by saying, oh, well, people are angry about Tory austerity. But I think you can be angry at government policy or angry at social injustice without being stupid, without just just acting like criminals. I even say it about Hong Kong. I support the Hong Kong students 110%, but there were a few incidents during last year's violence that, you know, didn't entirely help their image and just played into Chinese state hands. For example, there was a pro-Beijing elderly man was set on fire. Now that was awful. That was horrendous. Um, I get angry about a lot of things. I get angry at social injustice. Um, but I don't think anger is ever an excuse to destroy someone's property. It just isn't. And the far left and the regressive left need to stop making excuses for it and making false analogies like, oh, well, murder's worse, so this is somehow trivial. Of course, murder's worse, and you can condemn shootings and all the rest of it, but don't downplay looting and rioting, especially not looting, and especially not arson. It really makes me angry that anyone would even comprehend that that might be a small thing. What if that was your property? You know? So the next idiot that puts one of these little memes downplaying rioting or looting, challenge them. If you agree with me, challenge them, like I do, and say, well, look, what if that was your property? What if that was your business? I remember in early on in the unrest, one of the victims of the violence in Minneapolis was a black firefighter. A black firefighter. So there's no excuse for that. I don't buy this argument. Oh well, people are angry. People have had enough. Okay, so protest, vote politicians out of office, lobby. There's a lot of things you could do without burning shops and cars. That doesn't mean you can't be angry. Doesn't mean you can't be enraged even. But hurting ordinary people, this is true of any movement, in fact. Same with Extinction Rebellion. They claim they're peaceful. Hurting the public by sabotage, by causing stress in normal people's lives, it is just on top of. I mean, this country has went through a pandemic, 45,000 dead. If Extinction Rebellion go ahead, and I hope I'm not digressing here, but I think it relates to the subject of the nature of protest. If they go ahead with the stunt that they threatened, I really think that there needs to be harder penalties, and the public would be justified into taking matters into their own hands. And what I mean by that, I'm not talking about violence, but I'm talking about maybe counter vandalism, i.e., Extinction Rebellion, you know, vandalize public buildings or they block railway lines. Well, maybe then, their camps should be targeted with vandalism, little bit of their own medicine. And people might say that's wrong to advocate that, but I really do wonder what other way there is. They don't care about getting arrested. I think they're extremists, at least the hardcore ones are. I do think they're green extremists because they're using the green argument to justify anything. A bit like Black Lives Matter use what they perceive as racial injustice to justify their own racism and violence. Someone shouts out all lives matter, then shoots black protesters. They are an extremist. But I don't think that's any different from shouting out Black Lives Matter, then beating up a white trucker, as happened in Portland recently. So honestly, I don't envy our American cousins. It's a very, very turbulent time over there. But I really think now more than ever, reasonable people on both sides, so the centre left, the centre right, reasonable conservatives, reasonable liberals, moderates, really need to speak up because right now I think that the extremes are taking over. The extreme right, for sure, like ultranationalists, some of them Trump supporters, but also the extreme left, some of them outright communists, basically, when you look at their ideas and their mentality. So it is so, so important that reasonable people get the ground back. Thanks for watching.